welcome back to another episode of the Holdo Maneuver podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Mike. We're two hardworking dads trying to immerse ourselves in Star Wars and fit it into our very busy lives.
If this is your first time listening and or watching, in this podcast we'll share our thoughts on different topics from a galaxy far, far away. So today, this is episode 79, and we have a special guest joining us, Mr. Kai Patterson again. Welcome back, sir.
It's good to be back.
Yes. But before we start, we did have a question that we wanted to ask you.
Sure.
Do you know what was the Jedi's favorite brand of squirt gun in the 1990s?
I do not.
It was Super Ahsoka.
Jeez. Perfect. Beautiful. Love it.
Yeah. But yeah, welcome back, Kai.
Yes, well,
Thank you.
So yeah, like
I'm going to start off by apologizing. I'm
oh
in
yeah,
some
some housekeeping.
hotel somewhere that the internet is crap. So if I disappear, get choppy, or just become a picture on the screen, that is why.
And that's
Good to
also
know.
why Mike doesn't sound like his normal audio quality either, too.
It's true.
So Kai first joined us way back, I think some point last year for your Patterson cut of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Yes.
And then also last year, you then joined us, I think it was for episode 3 of Ahsoka, when we were talking about the series as a whole there. And I remember you said something during that episode. Do you remember what that was too?
Did I say that I wasn't going to do a Patterson cut of Ahsoka, or?
No, you're like, I think I'm going to edit my own version of this.
Yep, here we are.
Cut to clip of that episode right here.
It actually, I think, would have been way cooler if she had used the Force to torpedo her lightsabers towards them or something, so that they didn't have to get so close. Just if she just kind of let her lightsabers kind of go around, and just that would have been sick.
Just like
Maybe if I do a re-edit.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Just has them force spinning around.
Yeah.
Wait, so Kai, are you thinking about doing a one movie of this?
It really depends on how it all ends. I doing the re-edits it's a lot of work, and so I reserve that for things that I really am passionate about, and obviously I'm really passionate about Obi-Wan. I love Ahsoka too, but if it doesn't end well, if there's not because I feel like the reason why Obi-Wan worked as a movie was because, first of all, it was written as a movie first, and then
It should have been.
Yeah, but also the climax I felt was satisfactory enough that no matter what you kind of remove throughout the show, as long as you have a strong climax, people will leave going, wow, that was great. I really liked that. So that's why it would be hard if Ahsoka doesn't have a super satisfactory ending, then the movie would still fall flat either way, So we'll see. I'm not promising anything, so don't quote me on that. But we'll see.
I've already tweeted out that you're going to do it.
No.
But yeah, and then here we are, a year later. You did
What
it.
a clip. Wow.
Yeah.
Instant replay.
You guys remember that we did the Wayne's World thing and everything? Yeah. So how long from after you, I guess, joining us for that episode of talking about Ahsoka to the show ending, did you really, you're like, okay, I am gonna do this again. I'm gonna do Ahsoka.
It was truly not long after the Ahsoka show ended. I think it was maybe a week or two of me thinking about it and just figuring out my thoughts on the series as a whole, and if I wanted to do another undertaking like that. And yeah, so I think it was just about a week, and then I was like, I think I just started playing with some of the footage, and I was like, ah, dang it. If I start playing with the footage, it's over, you know? So
All right.
that's when I just started getting into it. And this one wasn't so much like how with the Obi-Wan series, it was more of like there was a lot of grievances that I had that I wanted to change. And with the Ahsoka series, for the most part, I really enjoyed it. And I know that like week to week, I was excited for the next one. I think the last couple episodes were a little more difficult to get through. I think some of the pacing was a little weird. So I think that's when I started being like, oh, I don't know about this. But overall, I liked it. And by the end of the show, I was like, I'm ready for season 2. So this project of, making the series into a movie was more of just like, I mean, for me, it's really fun to do these projects. It's really fun to, put my creative thinking cap on and solve problems. Like, how do I get 6 hours down to 2.5 hours? That it's just like a fun activity for me. So that was really more of what was going on. But as I kept editing, and scrutinizing the show, I realized that there was actually a lot more things that I didn't love than I had originally thought just watching it.
Interesting. Yeah. So like with that, like you're saying, like cutting it down from 6 to 2, like how many times do you think you watched it through to kind of start like making notes of like, all right, I can take that out. I can take that out.
Well, the way that I did it was I didn't really ever sit down and like come up with a plan of like, oh, this is what I want my 3-act story structure to be or anything like that. Whenever I do these edits, I always sit down and I just go through I lay out all of the episodes in my timeline and I just go from start to finish. I just cut anything that feels unnecessary or like fluff to me. Or anything that like slows down the pacing. I just cut it and cut it and cut it. And then I see what's left over. So when I did that with all 8 episodes of Ahsoka, I ended up with like a 3-hour, 10-minute cut or something. So that's when I exported it and my fiance and I watched it together. And that's where I was able to kind of like see the bigger picture of what the story is as it's more condensed. So nobody has seen that 3-hour cut other than me and my fiance. And then after I went through that, that's when I was like, okay, if I really want to make this like a 2.5-hour cut, what can I truncate and what do I have to keep? And so that's when I started to really dive into like, okay, if I can cut a whole B plot out, which in this case was the star map. That's when I was like, okay, I think I can cut about, at least 20 minutes there, just cutting out that whole plot line. But then of course I also like introduced new issues that I had to problem solve and figure out how to keep context here so that everything makes sense. But yeah, my goal is always to get them down to 2.5 hours because I eventually will be making feature films myself, and I know that studios are very hardcore about timing, and unless you're like Christopher Nolan or somebody with a big name, I want to keep practicing keeping films and keeping the stories that I tell in that feature film length of time, which is usually about 2 hours or 90 minutes to 2 hours. And then, with Star Wars, I give myself an extra half hour, especially with these shows. Because I think the longest one is The Last Jedi at like 2 hours 30 something minutes. So
That sounds about right.
But most of them are around the 2 hour to 2 hour 15 mark for Star Wars.
And that was a common principle that taught in any film class was the willingness to quote unquote kill your baby in terms of storytelling. Ruthless, cut to the bone.
It is, yeah.
Now, when you started, so like you said, you took the star map out. So that's where I remember.
Not to interrupt, but I'm going to. It actually felt like you cut like 2 full episodes out of the beginning with the pacing, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. Because I remember watching the series, and I think it was episode 4 or 5. I was finally like, "Oh, we're finally moving forward here." Like it finally felt like we were going somewhere. And then when I was watching your cut, it was like we got to the Balin and Ahsoka fight scene. I was like, "Wait, I feel like we missed 2 full episodes here." Like, I remember something. I was like, "Yeah, this is amazing." Like, I was so happy about that.
Yeah, pacing is a difficult one, especially when I'm rearranging these shows, because obviously I have the scenes that we have from the shows, and I want to keep the pacing. Show pacing and movie pacing are extremely different, and a lot of times, like I remember for my Obi-Wan movie, I sent it to a couple of friends who hadn't seen the show just to get like their thoughts on it. I wanted to know like how it read if you had never seen the show. And one of my friends was like, I mean, he was like, the only thing that I could tell that it was from a show was that like there kept being like these peaks at like the 45-minute marks, and so that does happen when turning these shows into movies, because naturally the shows have their own pace, and I'm trying to put it all into a movie pacing, which sometimes can make I think some of the biggest criticisms I've had for this edit was that the pacing at the beginning was really fast. So I understand that, and it's something that I'm willing to live with, especially.
I mean, it worked in my opinion, because I thought you got to the meat of the story quicker than the show did, and that was perfect in my opinion.
I appreciate it.
And I think we only missed that stuff because like how you said that you would show like Obi-Wan to people that hadn't seen the series. We only miss that stuff from Ahsoka because we watched the Ahsoka TV series, so we know that it's not there. But like, if you're just watching your cut of it, you're not going to realize there was this whole other thing with Ahsoka going to get that map.
Yeah, just missing outside of some Loth Cat shots that people might have liked.
Yeah, because you did a really good job with like seamlessly kind of adding in like the hologram of her like into that scene. They still kind of have that scene, but have it somewhere else. Like how fun, or I maybe I should put fun in air quotes, but like how fun was trying to manipulate those 2 different scenes to become that one scene now.
Yeah, I remember going through that area where Sabine is just like looking at the star map after she opens it, and she's still kind of trying to figure out the puzzle. So her like facial expressions, she's giving a lot. Like the actress was giving so much in this performance, and I was like, wait a second, she could be listening to somebody say something, because every part of her performance was so nuanced. You could really read into it however you wanted to. So as soon as I realized that her facial expressions could be utilized in a totally new way, I was like, oh, okay, I finally figured out how I can totally cut out the star map plot and still make it make sense. And personally, I actually like Sabine's performance in the movie version to that information better than in the show. I think that in the show, Ahsoka comes up and she's just like, she hands her the star map and she's like, I think I know how to find Ezra. And then you get this like swell of music and you just kind of like, zoom in, and that's pretty much it. Then we go to something else. But I do like that with this repurposed scene now, Sabine has a little bit more, I guess, emotion going on about this and about what Ahsoka is saying. And I think that it was a creative problem solving mission of mine to figure out that. And it was really fun once I finally had it. I was like, oh, there it is. That's perfect.
Yeah. I think, and there's like another spot that stood out to me as far as like the kind of like Ahsoka Sabine interaction like earlier in the movie cut of it was like the training scene there too, by like with you using the dialogue but making it like as if they were communicating telepathically.
Well, that's interesting. I've heard that interpretation multiple times now. For me personally, I was just arranging it as if it's like a montage and you're hearing scene, like audio from a different scene on top of the montage. But I have heard, you're not the first person that has had that interpretation. And I think honestly, that wasn't my intention for that, but I've watched it now a couple of times with that intention of like, oh, they're speaking telepathically. And I think that it also works that way too. And I think that however it resonates with you, like that's the correct answer. You know, I think if that makes the the end sequence feel more earned because they have been talking and training and actually having this connection, I think that works. But also I think that it can work where the first time they force communicate is when she's in the ring of Peridia and she's trying to like locate Sabine. That's where I intended the first time for them to like be force connected, but I think it still works the other way too.
Yeah, that's true. Mike, did you interpret it that way too, or how did you take it when you were watching it? Or Mike got stuck in the far away, it seems like, or he doesn't realize that he's muted. It's one of those two things.
No, I'm talking. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
What was the question? It was choppy, so I was trying to see if I could piece together before I responded.
We were asking you like how you had interpreted that scene with Ahsoka and Sabine training, like if you had like what you took from the kind of voice over them training in that scene. Did you think of it as them like telepathically communicating, or what did you think?
It didn't stand out. I'm not remembering it. It's no fault to anyone but my own.
No worries.
I'm trying to recall it. I'm just also frustrated with this internet, so sorry about that.
It was just it was after they were training with the lightsaber that I had added into that scene.
Yes.
And then it goes into a montage.
Yeah. I do recall thinking that they were showing them talking to each other through the Force in a way.
Gotcha. That is a common interpretation, and I'd say it's not wrong. It wasn't my intention, but it's not wrong.
So like with that too, like when you're going through it, like doing some of that stuff, I know you said with Obi-Wan you used Blender to add like some of like the effects into it. With like, did you use like the same kind of process doing Ahsoka that you did with Obi-Wan for adding in
I did way more with Ahsoka than I did with Obi-Wan. I was adding the whole entire Malachor set that I had created to have that last half of their Anakin and Ahsoka's interaction be on Malachor instead of on World Between Worlds. I mean, that was a huge undertaking, and I didn't do anything close to that in Obi-Wan. I think Obi-Wan, the closest was the opening shot with Anakin, in the bacta tank. I did a full CG shot where we zoom in on him while he's having the dream in the very beginning. But that is the closest to what I did on Ahsoka, because Ahsoka, I had full-on CG scenes. I had, full background replacements with Malachor. I was doing, AI voice performance where I would perform lines for certain characters and then I would have their AI voice overlay on top of my performance. So like Hu Yang, I added a couple lines and I had to get his accent right, because he's like, I think he's a Scottish actor doing a British accent. So, and I was an American doing a Scottish person doing a British accent. So it got kind of crazy.
Carry the 5.
Yeah.
Huh. That's kind of, yeah, that's crazy. And like with Malachor, I thought that looked great too. Like if I didn't know that wasn't in that version, like in the show, I would have just have assumed like that's where it was.
I've seen a couple of people repost that scene on social media, and the biggest compliment I receive is like scroll through the comments and people are like, "Wait, is this not how it went in the show?" And I'm like, "Okay, I did my job."
Nice. Yeah, that's kind of, I think that's sometimes like the weird thing about like certain jobs or like certain things that you have to do like within films or whatnot, is like if people don't notice it,
then you did your job.
Yeah. Which seems almost like a catch-22, but is good, I guess, too, because you don't want someone to notice it and then point out that they noticed it because it was bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a couple of friends who are like sound mixers and sound designers and stuff, and they're always like, if you're thinking about the work that I do, then I've failed, because you want, and that's the same with visual effects too. Like you want the work that you do to serve the story and nothing else. And if you're thinking about whatever effect you're looking at or listening to, then you've been pulled out of the story, and then that effect isn't serving the story anymore. Now it's taking you out as an audience member. So I always find it a huge compliment when people don't notice the work that I've done, and I'm like, okay, then you were so invested in the story that you weren't even thinking about how it was made.
That's very true.
That's a good point. I think back to when the prequels came out and how one of the biggest things most people talked about was the overuse, or whatever you want to call it, of CGI.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's like, it's a great point, because like we're sitting here talking about that instead of the movie when the prequels came out. So that's just a great point. I've never thought of it that way. So
yeah,
I'm glad that you said it. It's just something to really consider when you're watching stuff and making stuff.
Yeah, there's I forget his name, but which I feel bad about. But like I know that he's like worked at Lucasfilm, and like on Twitter he's like, he'll constantly like go through like these different film accounts that will like post like a scene or something from a movie and say no CG used. And he's like, well, actually, there was.
Yeah. Actually, they just removed a car in the background that, if it was a period piece, you wouldn't see like a Honda Odyssey in the background. But yes, there is, even in this new world of marketing everything as like no CGI used, there most certainly is CGI used, but it's just unnoticed, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I tell you, you'll be hard pressed to find a no CGI film these days.
Truly.
Yeah, like even scenes that you would assume didn't, well, most times will have it, if anything, to just like fix the sky.
Yeah, or some kind of thing that they have to like paint out, like in a reflection, like the reflection of the camera in somebody's glasses or something. Like, there is usually something that they've done to the shot.
Glasses are always the issue.
Yeah,
with reflections. Can you angle them down so that there's not reflections on them?
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, because I always have there's my ring lights right there.
Yep.
I always have to try to like make sure my head doesn't go too far out.
Yeah.
Basically. And well, speaking of eyes, one of the other things that I did notice in there too is Shinhati's eyes.
With eyes, yes.
Went now. I'm trying to recall. Are they full blown Sith eyes the entire?
No. I just added them in a couple of key moments, and that was actually a suggestion from someone in my Discord server while I was editing. They had posted about it, and they said, "Hey, it would be really cool if Shin had a couple of moments where she showed more of the darkness inside of her." And I was like, I actually really like that idea, and I like that it's Shin and not Balin, because I think throughout the series you can see that Shin has a little bit more darkness in her, and I think with Balin having grown up in the Jedi Order, I think he's more reluctant to, you know, add more darkness to his powers than maybe he's teaching. And I think Shin definitely embodies a little bit more chaos and a little bit more of the darkness. So I thought it would be great to highlight a couple of key moments where she starts channeling the dark side, and that comes out and manifests itself in her eyes changing into like more of a yellowish. And it's not like full Sith eyes where like there's the red ring around the iris and everything, and like, you know,
Right.
that's a far gone Sith. But it just added a little bit of that like glowing golden look to her eyes. And that is something I've seen in comments talking about my edit. That is something that seems to be kind of controversial. Some people are like, you know, they were never meant to be Sith or blah, blah, blah. And honestly, to me, I don't think that those like, you know, golden eyes or yellow eyes are exclusive to the Sith.
Yeah.
To me, that's like kind of just channeling the dark side.
Right.
And I
Jar
know
Jar
that,
had Sith eyes.
yeah,
Remember that?
exactly.
Well, I mean, Darth Jar Jar is canon now. He's in Rebuild the Galaxy.
That's right.
So.
You know, actually, that's I wasn't adding Sith eyes to Shin. I was adding Jar Jar Binks eyes to Shin.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Darth Maul's got Jar Jar eyes.
Yeah. But that is something that I personally think that, you know, it's not exclusive to the Sith. And I know that Balin and Shin are not Sith. They are, you know, kind of dark Jedi, or they're dark Force users. But I also don't think that the like yellow eyes is exclusive to Sith, because Sith is a religion. It's not like a disease, you know. So it's whatever you subscribe to, but they're using the dark side of the Force. So I think that would manifest in a physical way as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm gonna try to be on camera for this. This is a good point in our conversation for something that's been on my mind since we talked about watching Patterson cut of this. And I'm not saying Kai did this. I'm not saying he did this at all. I think he does this out of love and not hate. So I'll preface that. But fan cuts or re-editing or whatever is like, with all the negativity around Star Wars these days, and like how your cut inspired some backlash over whatever, like it almost feels like they're becoming in bad faith. Like you're doing it because, not you, meaning Kai,
no, I know what you're talking about.
The collective you is like, it's almost like another form of hating coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something I've been wrestling with. And again, I don't know if I fully believe that. It's just a thought that came into my head.
No, I totally understand. And it's actually something that I struggle with a lot, because one of the things that people automatically assume about me without knowing anything about me other than like seeing some of the trailers that I put out of my Ahsoka edit, they assume that I hate Star Wars, or that I am trying to like make my own thing canon, or, you know, that like I know better than Lucasfilm, or I'm so much better than Disney, whatever.
Yeah,
that seems to be
my brain was like that.
Yeah, and that is the risk that I take, like putting this kind of work out there, because I know that, you know, no matter what I say, if people already prejudge me, they're not going to be watching this podcast. They're not going to be listening to like how I really feel about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I have to accept that. It is really hard. It is really hard, because sometimes I'll get comments that are just like, they just assume the worst about me. And it hurts, because I would like to believe that I do these things out of love, and I'm not afraid to like be critical of something that I love. And I think that that's a healthy way to experience art, you know, to interpret it yourself, and then decide how you feel about it, and then reinterpret that art in a new way. I think that that's part of the art process is, you know, the artist shares it, the audience receives it, they interpret it, and then it takes on a life of its own. And that, you know, I think in this case, the life of its own is that I have now interpreted my own version of it, and then I've shared that reinterpretation with other people, and then how the audience reacts to that reinterpretation is another form of it taking a life of its own. So it's like, I think it's just part of the art process, and I totally understand the criticisms, and that some people probably target me and think of me as part of the problem, and that is, I can't do anything about that. I can't do anything about how people feel about me, but I can just keep doing what I do and loving the work that I do. And I think that's really all I can do.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping with this podcast partially is you can tell your side so people can see you're not doing this.
Yeah. There's no like
anger,
malice towards Lucasfilm or anything like that. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to do these edits if it weren't for the actual artists who go out and create the shows and stuff like that. It's no one would even be, I wouldn't be invited on this podcast if it weren't for Disney acquiring Lucasfilm. So I am very grateful for that whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and because like saying that too is that like if you didn't like the thing, you wouldn't spend X number of hours.
Yes, I spent 10 months doing this Ahsoka edit, so I wouldn't have done it if I didn't
did it
love
out of hate and anger. You were just pounding the keyboard the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, clicking that mouse extra hard.
There are some channels on YouTube that do talk about Star Wars out of spite, but we're not one of those ones, and we won't talk about those channels because. But I mean, because I remember there was, I think someone talked to Topher Grace once about like, because he's like done his like own cuts of like the prequel trilogies and like the Hobbit films and whatnot. And he kind of basically said the same thing, as that it was like it's just like it's like another form of showing how you love or like are passionate about whatever that thing may be, whether it's Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, comics, whatever have you, and you're just wanting to like show that love or your passion for that thing just in like another way of be like, and like you said, like, and then even like again with like the snake eating its tail, of like a lot of people interpreting that scene in one way where it wasn't your intention, but then everyone else noticed it that way. So maybe there's like stuff in the TV series that like they intended it to be a certain way, but then people interpret it a different way. So it's like, that's kind of perpetuating thing where it like does that.
You look at the book's better than the movie argument. Like you're watching one person who read the books. This is the book through their eyes. It's not the same as this person who says the book's better. It's okay. It doesn't mean this is worse. Just because you didn't like their interpretation doesn't mean it's wrong.
That's actually a really interesting thing to think about, because most often books, they have so much more time to spend with the characters that when you are converting a book into a movie, you're kind of doing what I do, where like you take a lot of content and you have to figure out creative ways to tell it in a shorter amount of time. So I like that.
Yeah,
that's why I've always gotten mad when people say the book's better. I was like, you're just not. You're thinking about it wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's
like,
why it's
sure
called
you
an
like the
adaptation.
book better because it made you think about it differently. Okay, Peter Jackson made Lord of the Rings. This is his adaptation. Yeah. This is what he thought of. This is what he thought would work in a film form.
And a book,
if you don't like it,
a book has unlimited budget when your imagination is stirring, So of course the book would probably feel better in your mind because it's exactly how you wanted it to be, with the craziest budget you could ever think of. But it's interesting to think about it that way.
That is like a good way to kind of think about it in that way, is that like your cuts would essentially be like a book adaptation, like a movie from book adaptation would basically be your cuts are movie adaptations of a TV series.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to think about it too. And which is always fun in there too, because like you said, you'd remove some of that stuff at the beginning, and there's like a little bit of stuff that was, and that's like when you really kind of notice what stuff is kind of like not, I don't think like redundant is the right word, but maybe the word that I can never pronounce properly. Yeah, see, I'm gonna try to say it.
Superfluous.
There you go. Kai said it, so I'm not gonna say it. He said it for me. Where like some scenes may feel like that, where like they're in there and they're like whatnot. So like in that case, it'd be like the 3PO, like Mon Mothma scene on Coruscant. Like you really realize how much you don't need that when you watch like your cut of that.
Yeah, and I think some people I've heard compare it to like having an extended edition for like Lord of the Rings, where like most people have seen the theatrical cut, but there are like hardcore people who are like, oh, I've seen the extended editions that are like 4 hours, and you get so much more. And so my movie could be that like theatrical thing, but then if you want way more, then you go watch the show, and then you can like immerse yourself in so much more of the characters. And so there are a lot of different ways to interpret it. There's also like, I know James Cameron was actually talking about doing the reverse of this, where he was like, I want Way of Water to come out as the theatrical cut, but he's like, I have so much more of this story. I would love to re-release it on Disney Plus as a series where he doesn't have to be truncated. He can do the full story that was in his head. Yeah. So there is like a market
12 hours long.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's a market for what I do, but and maybe this is definitely like way never going to happen, but if like Disney ever decided like it would be beneficial to release theatrical versions as well as the TV shows, and they wanted to call me up and help with that, I would for sure do it, because I think that there's a lot of people that would love to experience the stories that come out in the show form, but they don't have the time to spend on those shows, and they want to be part of it still, but they would want like a truncated version. So if they ever came knocking, I would not be opposed. I'd love to work with those artists. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, like some of my friends that hadn't watched Ahsoka yet, like, or like only watched the first episode, like we had our friend Kenny on here, Kenny and Aspen. Aspen's a huge Ahsoka fan. Like she loves like Clone Wars and Rebels and whatnot with Ahsoka. And then Kenny's not, but then he watched your film cut of it, and he hadn't finished after episode 1 of it, and he's like, this is a lot better. He's like, I already like it better because of the color grading.
Yeah.
So like he like that was like the first thing you noticed too, was this like the color grading that you had done on it. But yeah, I think that is like a good thing to mention too, is that like some people is why they have like they're either like, if it's Marvel stuff, they feel behind on it. They're like, oh, there's like so many things to watch, and then only X number of hours in the day, or like where we talking about that too, but where like you guys were talking about the camera and wanting to do that with Way of Water, but like Tarantino has done that with like
Hateful Eight,
and he had wanted to do that with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because there's a lot of stuff in that too, but I don't know like what the status of that is with doing that with that one.
I think probably Hateful Eight, the series, didn't go as well as they had hoped, so I think they probably shelved it. But because I watched Hateful Eight in theaters, and I thought it was great, and then I did try to watch the series, and it was, I mean, he has so much more time and he can really get you in the atmosphere, but I did find it extremely slow, and I didn't make it through the series, but the movie I really liked. So
yeah, I almost see it working better with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just because of like, because that movie's not set all in one
true
location. So maybe it might just lend itself a little bit better, like if they just like focus on like this, like these characters, then this character, and then so on. Because I know there's like stuff like there's like on the poster for that, there's Trudy is on like the phone on the poster, and I guess that's from like a deleted scene, or at least it's in the book, where like she's talking with Rick Dalton, and it's like just before like the Manson killers come, and that's like what gets him kind of in the mindset to like more or less do what he like does. to defend later on in the film. So I don't know. All that to say is that I like with like how like these re-edits are done, I think are good, and it's awesome to be able to see stories from like different perspectives, and and like you said, like if someone wants, like they can watch the theatrical cut, and or if you guys want to, you can watch the extended cuts on Disney Plus. It's like 6 hours long.
Yeah.
And that's like, and then it's kind of like a reverse like selling tool for them.
Yeah.
Although it seems like they might be like interested in like doing some of these theatrically, because like they released the whole World Between Worlds episode as like a theatrical kind of like experience for people
I was able to watch that episode in theaters.
So lucky. So lucky.
Yeah, it was incredible, because I remember after I watched that episode, which I think was episode 5, I remember I watched it again like right after I went home, and I watched it again on my TV, and it just did not hit the same.
Oh man.
So I was very fortunate to have bagged tickets to that. And my fiance and I we waited in line for like 2 hours, I think, maybe 3. And then we were like the last couple people that were let into the theater, because it was so full. So we had to like get seats like right in the front of the theater. So we saw like Anakin on this huge screen right in front of it. It felt like the Oppenheimer meme where you just see him so stretched out like that. But it was still really fun. I mean, it was so great to be in the theater and have the sound be
especially for that episode.
It was so great.
Yeah, because I think they did that with the first episodes of the Acolyte as well too. So it seems
I also went to go see those as well in theaters.
Gosh dang!
I know. That one I learned from my mistake of the first time, and I got there even earlier, so that my fiance and I were one of the first people in line, so we got really good seats for that one, which was unfortunate because they were okay. I will say though, the first 2 episodes I was like, okay, cool. And then the rest of the show I was like, dang it.
Patterson cut out the Acolyte.
Yeah, I think Disney was testing the market to see if they could do more stuff again. We're probably going to see more and more and less on the streaming service.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for more theatrical releases of Star Wars movies, because I think that's really where the magic happens with Star Wars. I think there's just something so incredible about filling up a theater with your Star Wars peers and experiencing it together and on the big screen and with all the sound and everything. I think that's where Star Wars should be experienced. So I'm excited for us to get back to that.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll do any kind of screenings like they did for Acolyte and Ahsoka for Skeleton Crew.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot that was coming out too soon. But
yeah, I think it's December. Yeah, I think it's December. Because I feel like that could be interesting too, just because it's got that whole kind of like emblem 80s.
Yeah, it does have like Goonies vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to say Stranger Things, because Stranger Things is just taking that vibe from those
from
things.
Spielberg. Yeah.
But yeah, and so I don't know. I guess is there anything else that you did in your cut that you're super proud of, that like it maybe didn't take like the longest to do, but it was kind of like as you were putting stuff together, you're like, yes.
When Ahsoka and Sabine kind of come together again, and they have their heartfelt conversation about like what it means to be a master, and how Ahsoka is without a doubt going to support Sabine. I needed that scene. That's like such an emotional, pivotal point of the movie, and without it, it would have just been a hollow action movie. So I knew I needed that. The problem was I had cut out Thrawn sending out his TIE fighters to shoot down the T6 shuttle. So that scene that they have together, they're like low flying over the Nodi creatures.
Oh, yeah.
And in my version, I have like cut them out of the foreground and put a different background on so that it looks like that scene happens when the T6 shuttle is shot down from, in my version, the fighter group from Morgan Elsbeth's team. So I fabricated that whole section so that, because obviously at the end they can't have the T6 shuttle perfect and, you know, ready to go, because they have to do a ground assault. They have to come in on the howlers and go from the bottom of the temple all the way up to the top. So I was like, how do I keep that emotional scene but also have the T6 shuttle shot down at some point? And I was like, well, I guess I could have the T6 shuttle shot down during that whole battle sequence by a different, so not by the TIE fighters, but by the fighter group. So I had to create a whole new scene in Blender where I like animated the fighter group shooting down Hu Yang in the T6 shuttle, and then it goes down, and then and then Ezra makes his lightsaber, and then Sabine and Ahsoka have that conversation, and then they go off on the howlers. And so that one was like a moment for me where I was like, okay, I had all my creative juices flowing to like solve that problem of, you know, truncating time and space, but also having it make sense and have all of the necessary story elements for the emotional beat to hit.
Nice.
And if you didn't notice, then I did my job.
Yeah, it's always good. And because I didn't notice, because I didn't remember exactly how that scene had gone in the original like version of the show, just because I had it, like you were saying, people don't like. There's only so many hours in the day, so like I haven't rewatched Ahsoka since I watched it until I watched your movie cut of it. So that was basically rewatching the TV show.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, good job then, because I did not notice that. So, was now like outside of your cut, what did you? Well, I guess maybe with your cut too. It's like, what was in the show that you made that you like wanted to make sure that you absolutely kept in your cut of it when you did it, like something that you thought maybe could get caught, but then like as you were doing it, you're like, no, I need to keep this part.
It was the troopers at the end, like the, I guess kind of like the zombie troopers.
Zombie trooper, yeah.
That was something that I really wanted to cut because I didn't feel like it was super necessary to what was going on. But at the end, I mean, especially when Sabine comes in to help save the day, if there were no troopers there, then Sabine would have just been shooting at Morgan Elsbeth as they're fighting. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
we needed troopers in that last scene. So I couldn't completely cut out the battalion of troopers that, you know, assists Morgan Elsbeth, even though I didn't, you know, it just took a really long time. And so for runtime purposes, I needed to cut a lot of that. And also, like, there's a part where the troopers are being resurrected, and Sabine and Ahsoka and Ezra are just standing there, and they can clearly just like run up the stairs, even though, you know, they're just looking behind them. So that really, really irked me. So again, that was another reason why I was like, I have to cut these troopers out, because it just like causes more problems than there needed to be in the movie. But then having that last part where Sabine comes in and does the selfless act of, you know, leaving behind Ezra and supporting her master, I needed that as well. And without her being able to help with, you know, killing some of the troopers that were there, I needed to include the troopers. So it wasn't that I was like, oh man, I would love it, but it was like a necessity for the way that the story, you know, played out.
That makes sense. And I think that should be a good spot to wrap it up. Now, is there anything anything else you would want people to check out that you've been working on? Because obviously you do stuff that's not Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
So what would you want people to check out that you've been
Yeah,
working
totally.
on?
So I just there was a movie that just came out on Amazon. You can rent it on Amazon. It's called Bolt from the Blue, and I was the visual effects supervisor for that, and I was a visual effects artist. My buddy Jack Martin wrote and directed it, and it's a fantastic family-friendly, like kind of 80s type adventure film. It's not set in the 80s, but it has that vibe,
Right.
and it's also a good story about climate change and renewable energy and stuff like that. So if you have family and you have kids, it's rated PG. It's a great movie to watch with your family. So Bolt from the Blue, look it up on Amazon and you can rent it and or buy it. And be sure to leave a review on IMDb for that as well. And then also any of my other like short films that I have written and directed, those can all be found on my website, kaipattersonfilms.com. And then you can follow my my social media, which is usually just at Kai Patterson Films on any social platform. So that's where you can find me and support my stuff.
Everybody do that. Go do it right now. We'll pause this. Go do that. Come back and then finish this episode, which will be done in a few seconds anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then for us, people can find us at holdopod.com if they can't spell. If they're like Mike, but holdomaneuver.com if you can spell.
It's true.
Yeah.
Maneuver is a hard one. I get it.
Yeah. That's why we had to go with holdopod.com as well too, since holdopod is also just like our handles for all social media stuff, and it's shorter. People don't like to type really long stuff. That's what I learned from my years working at GoDaddy. But yeah, thank you again, Kai, for joining us once again. Again, you're welcome back any time in the future that you would like to come back.
Appreciate it. I always have a great time on this podcast.
Well, we are glad that you do. And there's one more thing that we have to say. I don't know if Mike's internet's going to let him do it though. As always, we're grateful for George Lucas to creating. Wow, I just effed that up. So now I'm making it easier for Mike. As always, we are grateful to George Lucas for creating the Star Wars universe.
Oh dear! Thank the maker.
There we go. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thanks for watching.
Peace out, y'all.